And next thing I knew, those 2 words rose up out of nowhere together. It was like spiritual anarchist, and I was like, "Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I am," because my work is all about how do we offload all the things that we've learned, all the things that we've been indoctrinated to, the ideas, the shoulds, the expectations, all of those things that put us into boxes and limit us and keep us small and docile and obedient and beige.
Welcome to Wild and Finally Fucking Free, the show for disruptors, rebels, and revolutionaries who know they're here to change the damn world. I'm Kylie Patchett, your voice and visibility catalyst, and here we dive into unapologetic truth, magnetic messaging, and visibility that actually feels good in your body, your bones, and your business. We share the stories of the out-of-the-box, neuro-sparkly, creative, witchy wild ones rewriting how we live, love, learn, and lead. This isn't about being louder. It's about being rooted, resonant, and regulated so you can be real, raw, and ready to roar. If you're done contorting yourself to fit the mold and you're ready to own your voice, your power, and your place in the revolution, welcome home. Let's dive in. Hello, friends. It is podcast day again. Welcome to another double episode. This is part one of my conversation with soulmate client and dear friend, Tara Sullivan, who is the head witch woman in true celebration of herself at the Church of Tara. We are diving into spiritual anarchy, how you cannot separate politics from healing, and Tara's beautiful journey, the golden thread that's run through her life from this wild child, precocious, beautiful, untamed little girl to being taught and conditioned to come away from herself, and her return to her work in the world as a spiritual anarchist, a healer, a woman who I deeply love and admire. So this is part one of 2 parts. So let's dive into number 1.
Love.
Starting the podcast with some dancing. Hello, everybody. Welcome, Tara Sullivan. Tara, you are a gem of my life. We met just over a year ago. Beloved friend and soulmate client. And I'm so excited that you're here. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here, truly.
My goodness, we have already pretty much shot the breeze on all of our key topics for today, but we're going to dive in. Now, I love the fact that I so clearly remember the very first time that I saw your Instagram tag. I was traveling towards Brisbane. I was in launch for Scene, which is voice of visibility activation. I was in the car, my husband's driving. We were going down for some birthday, and I got this Instagram notification. It was like Church of Terror, and I was like, so like a wagging its tail moment of like, okay, there's something very interesting here. And I remember because I'd voice noted you to say, hello, welcome to my world, da, da, da. And your response, I was like, oh, I need to know this human because there was so much deliciousness in your vibe. That's why I love voice noting, right? Because you can really get a feel for energy. So I'm so excited we're here. Just over a
So, and I felt like that exactly the same way when, I mean, like I've told you, like it was a no-brainer for me for Scene as soon as I saw that what over here in the States is, Kamala Bratton's,
Yes.
advertisement that said good girls do not lead revolutions. And I was like, I'm tired of being a good girl and I want to lead a revolution. And then you voice noted me and I was like, oh my God, this is the best decision I've ever made. So from Mother Lana.
I mean, we'll get to this in your story as well, but I think that for me, that is the perfect example of just saying what you want to say, because there was so many parts of me that was still wanting to good girl up my own message. And I was like, Scene was the very first time I was like, you know what? Fuck that. I want to actually call out the disruptors, the rebels, the revolutionaries that are here to create new pathways and say, you want to change the world? You got to stop all the shit that, and I'm very aware that, and like we always talk about in client circles, you're always on the edge of your own invitation, right? So I was being called to stand up and own my full message, but that's what happens when you do. you magnetize people that are the perfect fit for it. That's a beautiful moment. Now, you call yourself a spiritual anarchist, and actually, I'll let you introduce yourself. When you meet someone, like I'm super, super interested because as we work together, you have got clearer and clearer and clearer on your mission on earth. Like you have always been very strongly rooted to that mission, but how do you introduce yourself now?
I am more dabbling in just directly saying I'm a spiritual anarchist these days. It definitely brings people up short, and actually that came through our work in the circle. You know, partially you're calling yourself, what do you call, a conduit for, or a
Voice and visibility catalyst, I think I was starting to
catalyst.
say. Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, oh God, I've called myself a healer forever because I've done one-on-one healing for almost 2 decades at this point.
Yep.
And as I'm stepping into a bigger platform and more online and that kind of thing, it was like, okay, what is the flavor of healer that I am? Because that's pretty generic. So how do I talk about what I do? And I was out for a walk one day after one of our sessions and like, just sort of like, it felt like the ideas were sort of tumbling like rocks in the surf was sort of one of these.
Yep.
And next thing I knew, those two words rose up out of nowhere together. It was like spiritual anarchist. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I am, because my work is all about how do we offload all the things that we've learned, all the things that we've been indoctrinated to, the ideas, the shoulds, the expectations, all of those things that put us into boxes and limit us and keep us small and docile and obedient and beige, instead of being our technicolor radiant selves. How do we step away from that? How do we divorce ourselves from that and reclaim our sovereignty in our own lives? So being an anarchist, let's blow up the boxes. Yes,
Yeah.
please.
And again, like you say, I'm a healer. And that word, I kind of feel like the word healer and the word coach are kind of similar. And there's so many different ideas about what that means. And, if I think about the word healer, if I want to go towards like the negative connotations, I often go down the track of like people who want to help everybody and they do it in a self-sacrificing way, all the way to people who empower people to find their own voice and their own sovereignty and their own flow, which I know is your flavor of that. But using the word healer dilutes your magic. And when you said spiritual anarchist, I still remember that call. Like it was a mastermind call and like all of us were like, hey. Like there was like a recognition moment. Oh, got goosebumps. And that is the power of language, right?
Truly. And it changed. I mean, like I said, I've been doing the work that I do for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And it even just naming it in that way actually changed how it was like everything got that much clearer. It wasn't like doing any different. It was like things were that much more in focus.
Yeah.
Because I was able to language it in that way. And it was like, yes.
That cool. So cool.
Yes.
I wanted to go like backwards in your timeline a little bit because when we first like met, because you have such a beautiful way of with words, you've just written a book, which you're just putting the finishing touches on, and you're starting to like share. I remember also one of our, very first calls, you shared this piece of writing, and I just remember like it was like everyone got really still. I always close my eyes when I'm hearing something that is powerful for me, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like a rally cry. Like this writing is like a call to arms to all the women who are sick of being downtrodden and docile and dismissing what they desire and want and need and all of those things. And you're starting to share more and more of like your magic through, like you've got such a beautiful way with words. And then I'm like, you know what? This is the golden thread that runs through your life because you started your original career as an actor, and and I don't mean performative as in that awful putting a mask on, your ability to capture people with word, both written and spoken. It's like, of course she needed to be an actor first because that was all the skills that she needs to actually create this recollection that she's here to create, right? So like you've never had, I think you proudly said to me once, I've never had a normal job. Like I've never fit in the boxes. So how did you start? Like, how did life lead you to here?
Oh, geez. Yeah. I mean, I was an actor and I started acting. My very first play was when I was 6 years old. And And then I acted all the way through. I had a brief period of time when I was in high school where I thought I would be a trial lawyer because
I could see that actually.
it was still acting, but you got your Corvette sooner was the thinking.
Yes, yes.
I was very fortunate. I had an English teacher my junior year,
Yeah.
Mrs. DiMaggio, and I'll never forget, she was having us write like practice essays for our college
Yeah.
applications. And she had us write our first one. I don't even remember what the prompt is, but I remember the day that she was going to return them.
Yeah.
And we were all in class and she wasn't there yet. And she like came in right as the bell and she's holding our papers and a cup of coffee in one hand. And she walked to the desk and she dropped them on the desk with a thump.
Oh.
And she said, "You people disgust me." She said, "You care more about money than you do about anything else." She said, "Let me tell you something. You are going to spend more time at your jobs than you will spend with your families. You're going to spend more time at your jobs than you'll spend with your lovers. So you better love what you're going to do."
Emma.
Yeah. And then she said, "You know what? You couldn't pay me $1 million not to be a teacher." She said, "I wish they'd pay me $1 million to be a teacher.
Yes.
But not for $1 million would I do anything else." She said, "Find something that makes you feel like that." And I went home and I said to my parents, I said, "Stop looking for pre-law programs. I'm going to theater school."
What's the Mrs. DiMaggio's, like,
Totally.
talk about spiritual anarchy right there, because she's actually not, because, you know, the education system, at least in Australia, would say to us, it's all about getting to the best university to get the best paying job. It doesn't matter if you love it or not. It doesn't matter if it's your purpose or not. It doesn't matter if you'll feel like you're dying on the inside when you do it. It's the status, the money, the power, the blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no.
And security, right? Like, I mean, over here, it's, make sure you have a good job with good benefits. You got to have somebody else paying for your health insurance. You have to write all of those kinds of things. And the idea of like, okay, I'm going to go out there and be outside the box about those kinds of things. I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to be a killer. I'm going to be, and my poor mother, when I finally got the show where I was doing 8 shows a week and I was paying the bills with it, and I had health insurance and paid vacation and all that kind of stuff. And she was so happy. And she was like, "You always believed. And I know I was always really afraid, but you did it." And then when I told her I was leaving the show to go back to school because I realized being an actor didn't make me happy, she was like, "But you just had health insurance." Poor woman.
God bless her.
Glad.
It's so funny. I got a lot of that conditioning. Like my dad was, 55 when I was born. So he was very old school in the, like, it's all about security and safety. And, you save up, you get the great Australian dream, own your own house, and I realized, like, after he passed away and I was making myself really wrong for some of the decisions I was making from what do I invest in? And I was like, oh, but I don't value the same thing that he does. So that's okay. Like he very much was safety and security and routine, and I'm like adventure and wildness and freedom and also safety. Like, there's definitely safety. And yeah, I had the moment where I was like, oh, it's okay. That's okay if I value something differently. But God, for so many years, all right.
So, and it's really interesting because I actually got a message from my parents too. At the same time, I was getting this one about safety and security is also like find something that brings you joy. I mean, both my parents went to school, both of them, and in the helping professions, and raised a passel of people who are all helpers and healer types at this point.
When I went back to school, is that when you studied like healing modalities? Like, was that the next step or?
So I went to school. I got a master's degree in creativity and spirituality.
I did.
I thought I was going to come back and I was going to reform the theater. I was going to make it a kinder, gentler place.
And revolutionary.
Yeah. Yep. I was going to do that. And I had been working with a healer myself for a couple of years who, like, hilariously, the very first time that I met him, and I met him sort of sideways. I was working in a casting agency. Everybody in the casting agency saw this healer. And I come from a family of doubting Thomases. So, like, we have to stick fingers in the blood before we believe anything. And so I was, "Healer, we'll see." And I ended up meeting him sort of sideways. And he said something that first time. I was like, "Fine, I'll come see you." And so I came in for my first session and we sat opposite each other across the desk, and he said hello and I said hello. And then he starts like looking everywhere but at me. And I knew that he was looking at my aura. It went on for like a full minute, which is a really long time for someone to be like,
for a doubting Thomas.
Yeah, like this. And at the end of that, and he used to be an actor as well, and so he has a flair for the dramatic, and he, like,
Yes.
whoops off his glasses, and he leans across the desk at me, and he goes, "Hello, little one who can do what I can do." But I was not ready for it. My brain went, "No, I'm an actor." And I leaned back and I crossed arms over my chest and I said, "Well, it's my first time here, so I don't know what you do, but hi."
Oh, I get like I don't get it very often, but when I get like in the presence of magic or a story of magic, I get like this feeling down my whole back body, like effervescence. And I just got that when it was just like, oh, he saw you from the very beginning.
From the very beginning, and he was very patient. Like, it took 4 years for me to get to the place of, like, "No, I'm not an actor." I go away to grad school, and even there was all this weird synchronous amazing synchronous stuff that was happening, even how I found the school was synchronous,
Mhm.
and so I go off to school, but I have this voice in my head that says to me, "This is great, and you need to do this, but you have to be back in Chicago by July of next year."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay," because again, lots of weird synchronous things, so
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
went to California totally prepared for it to take me wherever it was going to take
Yeah. Yeah.
me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it got to be, like, May, and nothing was popping as far as staying there,
Mhm.
and, everybody had been like, "Oh my god, you solar-powered human, you're gonna get to California, you're gonna love it."
Yeah. Yeah.
And California, and the weather was fine, but I sort of found I'm an East Coaster, and we're kinda edgy, and California can be, like, so laid back, they're practically horseshoes.
It's such a
Yeah,
different vibe. Oh my
such a
goodness.
different vibe, and I found myself homesick for the first time ever, and it meant Chicago, like, it didn't mean
Mm.
where I had grown up.
Yeah.
In that period, like, I get this email from my healer's office saying he's teaching a class in energy healing and would I be interested? And honest to God, I signed up for that class not because I had any intentions of being a healer, but because I knew I was gonna need community to have the weird woo-woo conversations that I was having at school.
Yeah.
And it was starting in July, and wasn't that perfect timing? 'Cause I needed to be back in July.
You already had the signpost from the universe.
I think I was in that class, the first class that I went to, I think I was in there, like, 10 minutes, and it felt as if the sky opened up and I got hit with a orange lightning bolt between my eyes and was like, "Oh, this is what I came back for."
Yeah.
And it was a 20-week course, and after 10 weeks, he took me on as his apprentice, and,
Mhm.
like, that was the start of that. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so magic. So magic. So cool. I love I love any golden thread stories, but it's like you have, like, I know the immense connection that you have with universal life force energy in the now, but it's cool to hear that even 20 years ago, you were so dialed in that it was like, no, no, this is where you need to go. This is exactly what you need to be doing. This is the timing that you need to do it and exactly where the location is as well.
Yeah, I mean, that piece was great, and I also feel like I've had to be dragged kicking and screaming into just about I mean, like, I almost went to massage school, like, 7 times before I did, and honestly, the thing I was like, "I don't like being stuck in an office, the idea of being in an office all day, every day, that just makes my skin crawl, like, not
Mhm.
interested in it," and, like, once I was actually in the room and having the experience, I was like, "Oh, when you close the door on the treatment room, it's like opening the door on the wardrobe to Narnia." Like,
Elegance?
know where you're gonna end up, even
Yeah.
if it's the same client who's been on the table before, like,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
just
yeah.
different experiences, so
So cool. It's so cool. And when you have a body in front of you, and I know you do remote sessions as well, but when you have a body in front of you, like you've told me stories about not specific clients, obviously, that goes without saying, but seeing the patterns of the physical end point of the psychological, emotional, energetic stuck points. And I guess like you really were being a spiritual anarchist even in the treatment room from the very beginning. I would assume that that is just the flavor that it always had.
yeah, well, it always feels like and I have said to people for years, like, I have all kinds of different analogies for
Yeah.
this, right? But it's like we all come in as these light-filled, airy temples to the all that is, and then life comes along and dumps a desert worth of sand on us in the form of other people's expectations and false beliefs about ourselves and
Mhm.
traumas and all of that, and then it's our jobs to dig out from underneath that, and, sometimes we're getting rid of great big chunks of not me, and we get to, like, backhoe or, shovel out and we're right in there with a toothbrush, like,
Mhm.
clearing things out, but the goal to me is to come back to clear the temple that is always there, right? Like we're always here waiting for ourselves to appear. So yeah, it's always coming back to that temple or to come back to the original blueprint that, being able to see where we've had weird wings built on us that aren't supposed to be.
Someone else's constructions. I think that was like when I saw Church of Terror in your, because this is your business name as well, like the concept of coming home to the temple that is us. When I first saw that, there was something very like it was almost like I want to know someone who has the fuck you to the system. And also there's a part of me that was like the audacity of like, there is a church inside of me and there's a church inside of you. And I was like, that is the edge that I love in people when they're like, this is my truth. And you're not trying to like convert the world to that truth necessarily, but you're here for anyone who is aligned to that truth, which is very cool. I want to go back to, I know when we're working on like your origin story, you have this kind of moment in time where you realize that you were this like beautiful pixie-like kid as a little person. And then the sand started to get poured in. And I think it was when you were at college, hey, that you college, sorry, I don't even know whether, is it university or college? Because it's different here. So is it when you,
Either one. Yeah.
when you were in the writing class and you were getting all of those prompts and
That was actually I took that writing class when I was 40. The year.
Okay, so more recent. Okay.
More
Interesting.
recently. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I'm in class. I'm taking my first writing class since college.
Yeah.
Because I'm one of those teachers in college who, like, if your tree didn't look like her tree, it wasn't really a tree. And I was very into literature, and at the time I was very into like writing fantasies about really empowered women. And I that's what it was. Women who, when they walked out, their heels made sparks. Like, I mean,
Amazing.
so I'm taking my very first writing, and it happened like after this sort of horrific breakup that I went through, where I had sort of overgiven way too much of myself, and came to this place of like, the way for me to reclaim myself is through my own joy. And like, what is sexy and juicy to me right now? Like, I need to start doing things to like fill my joy up so that I can find myself again. Yeah. And one of those things was like, oh, I really want to take a writing class. So I was taking this class. We call it live lit. So it's like writing for performance.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of both of the things.
Yeah.
And every prompt that the teacher gave, I wrote a piece from like 6 and under. And to the point where he actually looked at me at one point and was like, have you had a life since you turned 5? Like, and I was like, I don't know, but like, whatever you ask, like, this is where I come to.
Go. Yeah.
And like, at some point it dawned on me that the reason that was because I was trying to reclaim who I was before I went to school and started all the indoctrination of, you're too much, you're too loud, you talk too much, you have too much energy, you have too much imagination, you play sports too aggressively for a girl, all of those kinds of things. And so that wild child that I had been, I mean, I have such memories of like hanging out the window of the car and like singing to the sun. And being very clear. I mean, I know I was a handful, like very clear about what I was willing to do and what I wasn't willing to do. And, all of those kinds of things. And, I mean, there's certainly some of that where I look at the raw material. I'm like, I can see why that needed to be shaped, but not squashed in quite the way.
Not squashed. Yeah. And I think too, like when we're in systems like the education system or whatever, depending on culture, family, community, whatever, receiving any message that's like your natural way of being is not the right way to be is so confronting. And of course, as little people, we have to choose to belong. Like we can't survive without the elders, the, people that are supposed to be our caretakers. And so unfortunately, often we learn to self-abandon and pretend that we're not. And it's so wild to me because the Tara I know now like feels the same energy-wise as like that ferocious, precocious, beautiful, just, I'm going to do whatever feels good. And so it's I don't know, I like, there's a part of me that wants to kind of go back in time and be like, woo, were you like then before you remembered? Because you feel like that to me now. It's very
I
interesting.
mean, I think there were that if you had looked at me from the outside, there were a lot of people who would have thought that I was living that life. I
Yeah.
mean, like, I've always lived up to the edge of the boxes.
Yes.
And I have a tendency to explode out of them. Like, the level of control that I had on myself, I think one of the first things we talked about was, like, constantly having this monitor outside of myself, this piece of myself that was constantly watching myself to make sure that I was behaving appropriately. And the level of, like, beating myself up I would do in the aftermath of something if I felt like I had been too free.
Yeah.
The level of, like, ick that I would feel after that. And I mean, we're all our own first client, right? Like, the first person I had to help with spiritual anarchy was me.
Yeah. We're always the first to move. Well, if we're in integrity, we are. Put it that way.
Right.
I'm interested too, as you were going through, so you were already doing healing work at this stage. So as you were going through this realization yourself, did you also notice a shift or patterns in clients that kept on coming up around maybe not the same like wild child being covered up, but that same sort of like, here's who I really am, here's what I really want, but this is the way that I've taught myself I have to be. And how do they show up actually? Yeah, the patterns, but also I love your kind of sense of like the impact that the internal oppression, like we've been oppressed by external, then we turn it internal. What happens with our energy and our physical body that really, it just like repeats the cycle, right? Re-emphasize.
Well, the idea that we are our own jailers, I mean, I've really come to this place with the, like, having language around it to understand, like, that inner critic part of ourselves that is constantly policing it. What it's policing is the edges of the boxes, right?
Yeah.
Like, anytime that we are on the verge of maybe stepping outside of the box, that's when the voices get really, really loud. And so for me, like, I've come to a place where, like, when my inner critic pops up, and I love that you've named yours. And so then I had to go name mine, mine is Brittany, and she talked about me. And she really, really, really wants me to be likable. And so it's like a mean girl. A mean girl. She's, and Brittany pops up when I'm at that place. And so when Brittany is there, I'm like, ooh, I must be really dancing on the edge of my self-limitations. Like, thanks, Brittany. Now go sit in the back of the bus.
You're welcome. I will listen to you. This is like, sorry, you go.
Oh, and I think from the beginning with my practice, because of the way that I see people, like, one of the other analogies I often use is that, like, standing in front of someone or standing with my hands in someone's body is a lot like standing in front of a choir and being able to hear where the notes are.
Oh, yes. I love that.
And my job is to sort of bring it all into harmony so that somebody's music can be heard clearly, like to tune the static out and the whole thing. But the piece of that for me that is like one step above that is that each of us has our own intrinsic music. That is unique to only you. And so from the very beginning, it was about how do we clean this up so the you of you can show up, like removing whatever it is that's causing that static. And so even though I couldn't have languaged it like that, only, like, the intuitive piece of me was always moving
towards that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
It just, to me, like it's the dissonance versus resonance thing. It's like, what is your true? Yeah, I really like that. I like the analogy of the choir because it's like, bringing some parts up and quieting down and clearing out the background noise and turning off the channels that are not actually yours to begin with.
And that part of you, you're singing out of tune. Like,
yes. Yeah. Do you find it's like if you have a new client come to you and in their mind, like maybe they're the doubting Thomases that we were talking about, which I definitely was when I first came across any alternative medicine, very much so. When people come to you that really, really don't yet understand that the physical expression is one part of the equation. Like it's not that you just have a sore neck, it's that there's something that's out of balance in this whole energetic equation that is also creating a physical like disease or unease. How do you how do you put that into words to help people? And I know maybe it's different for different people, but I'm interested to, because I love your love of language. I think it's going to be helpful for people to kind of understand it.
I tend to meet people where they're at. So the people who show up and think that they're just there for body work, I mean, I have a first time spiel that I always run people through because I run energy while I'm doing body work, and so
Yes.
it makes things different than your typical massage.
Yeah.
Um, and so I always tell them, like these are the things that can happen. Like I'll say, sometimes people will tell me my hands feel really hot.
Mhm.
They feel a vibration coming through. It happens in two different directions. You may be releasing something you don't need or something that's like vibrating where it's supposed to. So we just nudge that back into its proper tack. And I always tell them, if there's a pocket of old stuck energy and there's something that, you've been holding on to for a while. And I always assure them that all of us have them. And
Yes.
for all of us, for me, that could be like circling the landing field and waiting for the clouds to open. And so when it happens, it tends to happen pretty suddenly. And for me, to run everything up and through me. And so it's like I have my mouth fastened around a fire hose. So they might hear me go or boom or idea or weird noises. And I'm always like, it doesn't hurt. It's
Yes.
fine.
It's fine. I'm just a conduit.
But my head's a little magic 8 ball-y. So if things bubble up and like knock hard enough on the inside of my head, I'll ask, does this mean anything for you? Or,
Yeah.
and I open up the invitation if they see any colors or they have visions.
Cool.
And I also and I'm like, and none of that may happen. This may be 90 minutes on the table and you're just going to get up feeling lighter and brighter and more able to be you
Yeah.
in the world and feeling delicious in your body. So like wherever you're at, however you walk out.
Perfect and correct. You were wondering too, so you've been doing this work for a couple of decades. At what stage? Because I think the other thing that we talked about that very first day was the fact that you already had an in-person coven, and you were talking about like you wanted to expand the reach of the work that you do in that kind of circle to like a world stage. And I'm like, how did that come about? Like, when did you also go, okay, I'm going to come out of the broom closet as well? And also your definition of witch too, because I love that specific.
Yeah. So my definition of witch, where I've come to, which is actually part of the story as well.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, and this was actually after I had started the coven, so we could start there.
Yeah.
So I had done some sort of ritual stuff and things like that. We'd had a women's circle down at the office that had disbanded, and I had really enjoyed the ritual leadership part of it. I actually considered when I was leaving theater, I actually considered going into the ministry. And so the idea of creating experiences for people to have that connection, like that part of it was very interesting. So I had started to sort of do ritual here at my house when I felt like it. It was sort of like it would happen every now and then. And it's funny because I hadn't quite put this together until this moment, but actually politics drove the decision for the coven to become an every month kind of thing, because here in the States, Brett Kavanaugh, who is now one of the Supreme Court justices, was up for confirmation, and he had been accused pretty credibly of sexual abuse. And it was very clear that they had not followed up on anything. There was all kinds of things that came out afterwards as far as them not having done their due diligence on him. Yeah. And he had a meltdown and like screamed and raged and cried and every woman I knew was like watching this, waiting to see. I mean, we had Harvey Weinstein like earlier in the year, and that was a huge celebration of like, oh, they're finally going to listen to us. And here's this happening at this level, and then they confirmed him.
Yeah,
and I have never, in all my years of practice, like usually when big world events happen, the phones at the office ring off the hook. Yeah. The phones went silent for like 3 weeks. And like all of the women were like just getting through their lives. Like it was like, I can't even begin to process this because I'm going to come unglued.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I did a ritual. I invited people to come and we did a ritual around it, and like giving people some space to talk about their own experiences of being sexually abused and all of those kinds of things. And I thought to myself in that moment, I was like, we need a space like this to be able to have these conversations and in this sort of like ritual container on a more regular basis. And And then my brain was like, well, Sullivan, you spot it, you got it.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
well, that,
I like that.
that was in October, and the coven became a regular thing in January.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that it was politically, because I like, you're going through I mean, the whole world is going through wild times, but particularly, of course, with the weird orange man in office, once again, doing harm to all and sundry. And I've watched it's like the political climate sharpens your words, sharpens your drive, sharpens your, like, we have to, like, the change is not coming from external. No one is coming to save us. It is our job to save ourselves. And to do that, we've got to break down all the conditioning, all the oppression that we've turned internal so that we can actually create new pathways. So it kind of makes sense to me. Like, yeah, it actually makes me want to look at your astrology. Okay. Where are the rebellious planets in the, because I can guess, but so
There's a lot of Leo in there.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's surprising. I think when we were talking about this, you were like, you cannot separate politics and healing. There's no way to disengage or unlock those separately without them.
Especially at this point in history, like it feels very much like, right, the political activism, which is all about how do we dismantle this system, that it is so clear that it's not working for the vast majority of us.
It's not working for anyone unless you're at the top of the tree and male, pale and stale with a lot of cash and some high buddies that will let you sexually abuse people left, right and center quite happily and just turn a blind eye.
It works for them and it works for nobody else. And we're seeing that so very clear. And of course, there's lots of people who have seen that. I mean, people of color and queer people and all of that have been very clear all the way along that that's, and women to a certain amount too. But I think it's like it is, there's a consensus at this point, it feels like, for a lot of us, that like the system's not working. Well, that same political system that we're trying to dismantle out there is the same system that is oppressing us in here. It's all the things that we have taken on and that inner jailer has taken on that keep us limited in our expression of self and in our ability to like enjoy our lives and to be fully present and bring all of our gifts to the world, right? I keep saying to people, like, we know what the outcome of mainstream thinking is. You don't need a glass crystal ball. Like, all you have to do is like turn on the news or look out the window. Like, this is what mainstream thinking has gotten us. And so if you want a different reality, then we need all the weird out of the box, like, hey, we've never done this before, but
let's try something new.
We need everybody to feel free enough to like to have the ideas to begin with and then bring them to the fore and be like, hey, let's consider some of this. And we all need to get out of the box to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And we all need to be brave enough to be the people that move, because, and this, I think that was the whole point behind the scene thing, is like, you want to change the world, you've got to fucking change it. Like, you've got to step up. Like, the time, and I was reading back through a couple of posts that I've written then, and I was like, oh my God, I feel even more strongly about this a year later. Again, the happy accident of the universe just giving me Kamala Green as the color of that campaign, because I didn't even know that until you told me that, like 6 months after that campaign. But I think the political climate was so like active for everybody involved. So activating people's belief systems and extreme beliefs and like us and them and you're right and I'm wrong and we can't have blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what about there's a third way where everyone is welcome at the table and everyone gets to add their music? If you come back to your analogy, like everyone brings a flavor. And I know it feels like we're forever away from it sometimes, but I do think there's enough of us, like the pendulum is almost at that we can't get any more extreme and it has to come back in the other direction. And, we were talking about astrology before we started recording, and it's like all of this activation that happens mid this year. It's like, yeah, we're getting ready for a massive, massive shift. And we all need to take responsibility for the internal oppression, like the anarchy, or maybe it's like internal anarchy against the oppression, which is the external oppressor turned inwards.
And that to me is what spiritual anarchy is, right? Like It is not anarchy that's out there blowing
out
up
there.
buildings. It's anarchy that's in here blowing up those limitations because we need every voice. Like, it's really interesting. I wrote we always do a calling in the directions for the coven.
Yes.
And I wrote them for the very first circle. And I like, I looked at a bunch of different things that were online and I pulled
Yeah.
this and that I liked, and then I added my own stuff. And it wasn't until like, I don't know, the fourth or fifth time we used it that I realized that I had put all the rules that I wanted for the coven into that calling in the directions. And it is all about how do we as women stand for one another, understanding that the choices that are right for you may not be the choices that are right for me. But if
Yes.
you're making them in alignment with your truth and with higher good, I can be absolutely 100% in support of it, even though I would never do that thing myself.
No,
And
exactly.
and that's what we all need. Like, this homogenization that is demanded of us, right? Like, you have to fit into the box, you have to fit into the mold, you have to look this way, you have to love this way. Like,
Mhm.
we are missing all of the joy in life if we are making everything like white, I mean,
Exactly.
I don't like I know that everybody thinks it's elegant to have like all white flowers in a don't give me I want a bouquet that's got every
That's
color.
what I want. Chaos in a bouquet.
Chaos in a bouquet, and it's gorgeous, and
Yes.
that's what I want for all of us. Like, please bring all of your color and
Yeah.
all of your scent and all of your beauty and all of your messiness
Yeah.
to the table, because
Yeah.
that's real and that's what's going to make us great, not limiting us.
Exactly. It's such a I've never been so bloody clear on like my original love of genetics was all around individuation, like the magic that is every single individual human. Never going to have another you, never have. Talk about that all the time. But then it's not until just recently, and it seems like obvious now I'm saying it out loud, but it's not until just recently that I've realized that the whole point of the machine is to make us one beige, very easy to manipulate, docile, obedient, homogenous mush that doesn't think or lead or feel or have any external, internal connection to their wisdom and connection to their own power and sovereignty and right to choose and all of those things. And I think too, the ripple that keeps on coming back to me is I feel like the pendulum swing is going to be centered around individualism. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I don't mean fuck you, every man for himself or every woman for himself or whatever. What I mean is celebrating the differences and needing all of, every single color and chaos in the bouquet. And to I don't know, I feel like a theme for me this year is like downgrading the expectations I have of myself. And because it's the expectations that the internal oppressor has of me, not the authentic self, not I am inside of me. It's just, all of that external stuff. So I'm like, how can we allow ourselves to be fully in the magic and the mess and all of the things? Like, that's we always talk about in the circles that I have is like every single emotion, every single state of being, every single phase of you, every single whatever. Like you do not have to turn up in a particular way. You're welcome. The only rule really is don't spew anything on anyone else, which, but I think coming back to you saying about like the Kavanaugh end of things and to me, it's not just about taking your power back, but it's actually being in community with women who are having the conversations without, because the most hideous thing I saw in all of the political landscape, particularly around election time, and I know it is, of course, continuing, but I have disconnected from the news because I'm like, I just cannot. But it was that terrible. You are a bad person because your view does not align with mine, like that. And you're just like, you can't have that opinion of other people without doing damage to yourself. Like you can't do it outwardly and not be doing it internally. So how do we like loosen all of that up? But when you're talking about community around the Kavanaugh thing, it's like having community, and I would say for all individuals, but particularly women, where you can talk about things that you maybe have not spoken about before or need to just get external to voice process and come to even what you are feeling about it. Because I think the extremism, it's like pick a camp and it's like, I'm an individual human and there's lots of nuances about how I think and feel about lots of different things. And to have communities like what you have with Coven and what you're creating online, where people are welcome to come as with whatever opinion that they have. And exactly like you said, yes, I may not agree necessarily, and that may not be my choice, but I'm not going to make you the enemy if you don't align 1,000%, because then that's just more oppression. Like, we're just creating more of the same. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. If this episode lit a fire in your body, in your business, deep down in your bones, please take a moment to drop a rating and review so more rebels just like you can find us. And don't keep this goodness to yourself. Share it with your disruptive rebel and revolutionary friends who are ready to roar right alongside of you. Until next time, stay wild, stay unapologetic, and stay fucking free.